He was raised in the land down under, where a man thinks on his feet, speaks with his fists, and lives by his wits.
Have you ever thought about a scene where right on the film set, the lead actress, who was the star's wife, was replaced, giving way to an unknown face? And that very decision sparked a scandalous affair that shook the entertainment world. It doesn't stop there. A real crocodile even wandered onto the set, nearly costing the entire crew their lives, forcing the team to draw real guns to protect themselves. Those are just a few of the untold behind-the-scenes secrets of Crocodile Dundee, the film released in 1986 that stunned Hollywood by turning a criticised script into a cultural explosion that conquered global audiences. But ultimately, behind those seemingly laughter-filled scenes, how many truths have audiences never heard? And if you knew them all, would you still see Crocodile Dundee the same way you did before? All will be revealed in this video. 1. The real-life man who inspired Mick Dundee died in a hail of bullets. You surely know Mick Dundee from the film, but you may not know that this character was based on a real person, Rod Ansell. In the early 1980s, he became a sensation across Australia when he was stranded at sea, lost his boat, and wandered alone into the deep wilderness. To survive, Ansell ate live frogs, insects, drank cattle blood, and slept on bare ground for months. The press followed every detail, turning him into a symbol of the wild, the direct model for Paul Hogan to shape Dundee. But the story didn't end in legend. Years later, Ansell spiraled into addiction. On August 3, 1999, he carried a rifle and a handgun, blocked a truck, and opened fire on police. The shootout lasted into the night. The outcome? A young officer fell and Ansell died on the spot, his body riddled with bullets. And that's just the start of the shocking truths behind the scenes. 2. The crocodile in the film wasn't a prop. It was real and nearly killed someone. Northern Territory, dawn. The crew was preparing to shoot a riverside scene and no one noticed the leftover food barrels left near the set. That smell attracted an unexpected guest, a real crocodile. It slithered out of the darkness, silently lunged into the water and approached the filming area just meters from Paul Hogan. No one was prepared. Screams erupted, cameras toppled, and the crew fled in chaos. Security guards immediately drew real guns, aiming straight at the stalking creature. If it had leapt, blood would have been spilled right on the set. The crocodile eventually slipped back into the water, disappearing without a trace. No one was hurt, but the fear lingered. Filming stopped for a day. From then on, every time they stepped near a river, the crew stationed armed guards with loaded guns. It seemed like the only time death stalked the crew. But just days later, another even more unexpected accident occurred. 3. A bite that could kill, and it happened right on the set. While preparing for a scene in the grasslands, a piercing scream rang out. A camera assistant was bitten on the leg by a venomous snake while adjusting equipment near a bush. Blood gushed instantly, and the set descended into chaos. The on-site medic rushed over, injected adrenaline, bandaged the wound, and called for an emergency helicopter. The assistant was airlifted within an hour, narrowly escaping death. But the shock left a heavy toll. Several actors refused to step into tall grass again, and one scene was completely cancelled because no one dared approach the snake-infested area. And just as the fear of nature hadn't yet subsided, another scandal erupted, shaking the crew in a way no one anticipated. 4. The film exploded into a scandal over the lead star's affair. Do you admire Paul Hogan? So did I, but when I learned about this, I had to rethink. During filming, Hogan was a family man with a wife and children. Yet, while acting alongside Linda Kozlowski in the remote outback, amidst scorching heat and exhausting schedules, the two began sharing more than just scripted glances. Rumours spread quickly within the crew, with many claiming they saw them disappear together after hours. When the film premiered, audiences marvelled at the perfect chemistry of the on-screen couple. But the press smelled something else: scandal. Weeks later, the affair exploded across headlines, hounding Hogan everywhere. Ultimately, he divorced his wife and married Kozlowski, but that marriage remained under scrutiny, becoming a lingering topic for decades. If this love story shook Hogan's image, the way he handled the massive fortune he earned was even more shocking. A multi-million-dollar star hid money in suitcases and socks. What would a star earning millions do? Buy a mansion, hire an accountant, open a bank account? Wrong. Paul Hogan chose a dangerously unbelievable method. After the film became a global phenomenon, Hogan pocketed a massive sum. But instead of banking it, he hid the cash and carried it with him on flights between the US and Australia. Suitcases stuffed with dollars, rolls of cash shoved into socks, even tucked into envelopes to avoid detection. One curious customs officer could have turned Hogan into the centre of an international money laundering scandal. And that wasn't the only secret hidden behind the film's iconic scenes. 6. The water buffalo hypnosis was just a camera trick. The scene where Mick Dundee raises his hand and stops a buffalo in its tracks made millions of viewers worldwide believe in the magic of the Bushman. But the behind-the-scenes truth is entirely different. The buffalo brought to the set was trained but refused to obey on the day of shooting. Every attempt to position it failed. The crew had to call a veterinarian. A sedative shot was administered, and the team waited hours for just a few seconds of the animal standing still. In that rare moment, Hogan raised his hand, held the pose, and turned a failure into an iconic scene. Audiences thought they were witnessing mystical skill. In reality, it was a few random seconds bought with a sedative. And if that scene was improvised, the truth behind the film's most famous line is even more shocking. 7. The film's most famous scene wasn't in the script. In the original script, the alley dialogue had just a few bland lines. No impact, no weight. Paul Hogan read it and shook his head. Too flat. And he did something no one expected. He improvised. When the rival character pulled a knife, Hogan coolly said, "That's not a knife, that's a knife." The crew burst into laughter, and test audiences applauded like thunder. A spontaneous line became a pop culture legacy, quoted, parodied, and printed on t-shirts for decades. Can you believe it? The moment that defined 1980s cinema was never in the script. And that's not the final shock from the film's seemingly harmless scenes. 8. The wife was replaced as the lead actress, swapped for a future lover. Initially, the role of Sue was given to Paul Hogan's own wife. They had been together for years, building a career together, making her the obvious choice. But when the cameras rolled, the harsh truth emerged. The couple in the same frame lacked any spark. Romantic scenes became lifeless, awkward pieces, so much so that the crew whispered behind their backs. In stark contrast, when Linda Kozlowski, an unknown stage actress from New York, auditioned, everything changed. Her eyes, smile, the way she stood next to Hogan, it was all natural, magnetic, a chemistry his wife never had. The producers saw the difference instantly. The decision was swift and cold. The wife was out. Linda took her place. From there, an illicit romance unfolded, leading to a painful marital break afterward. The secrets don't end there. Even the hat on Hogan's head hides a story no less surprising. 9. The crocodile skin hat wasn't a prop. It was a personal treasure. At first, I thought the crocodile skin hat was a prop, but the truth is the complete opposite. It was Paul Hogan's personal hat, worn for years through red dust and sweat in real life. It was worn, misshapen, and smelled so bad that the set lights reflected unevenly off it. The costume team suggested replacing it with a new, cleaner, more cinematic version. Hogan flatly refused. He declared, "No hat, no Dundee." So, the team made multiple replicas, then tortured them with knives, dust, and glue to mimic every scuff and crease of the original. A seemingly trivial personal item became a global cinematic icon. And if Hogan's hat was that real, imagine the harsh conditions the lead actress endured on set. 10. The lead actress lived in a tin shack in the wilderness. Think a Hollywood actress would stay in a luxury hotel during filming? No. Linda Kozlowski was thrown into a rickety tin shack in the middle of Kakadu Forest. No electricity, no running water, just a thin mattress and the constant hum of insects around her. At night, the heat from the tin roof turned the shack into an oven. Outside, crickets, frogs, and mosquitoes droned endlessly. Many nights, Linda stayed awake, drenched in sweat, waiting for dawn to step onto the set. But that exhaustion was etched on her face. When the cameras rolled, audiences saw a strong, raw woman, not acting but real. And in that environment, an iconic scene was crafted from an unexpected trick. 11. Hollywood bigwigs wanted to dub Hogan's voice. It's hard to believe, but this film was heavily criticised from the start. During test screenings in the US, several studio executives walked out after 20 minutes. They said the Australian slang was too hard to understand, Hogan's accent too rustic, and American audiences would never accept it. Some even suggested an unbelievable solution: hire an American actor to dub Paul Hogan's voice. If Hogan had agreed, Dundee wouldn't have been Dundee. But he fought back, refusing to compromise and insisting on keeping his thick Australian accent. In the end, Hogan edited an international version, tweaking it for clarity but preserving the character's core. And that one-of-a-kind quality helped the film become a global phenomenon, grossing over $300 million. But he might not have done it without a mysterious figure quietly backing the project. 12. A famous rock star secretly funded the films. No contract, no binding terms, just a reckless decision. Michael Hutchence, the frontman of INXS, quietly gave money to Paul Hogan to make the film. He believed this small project deserved to exist, despite no guarantee of profit. Hutchence didn't demand credit or boast about it. When the film exploded into an international blockbuster, he only smiled each time he turned on the hotel TV and saw Mick Dundee on screen. No bragging, no fanfare, just silent pride. A spontaneous investment turned into a historic, cinematic explosion for Australia. But behind that success, few know the film almost never existed. 13. The film almost never existed. When Paul Hogan pitched the idea to studios, he was met with mocking laughter. "Too Australian, too strange, no one will watch it," they said. Not a single door opened, Ed. To Hollywood, it was a guaranteed failure. But Hogan didn't give up. He wrote the script himself, invested his own money, and partnered with a local producer. Every scene, every detail was made amid skepticism. And that self-made film became the highest-grossing Australian film at the time of its release. And from that slap in the face, Hogan took the film to the streets of New York, where a bizarre scene unfolded. 14. New Yorkers thought Paul Hogan was a real Bushman. In the crowded streets of Manhattan, Paul Hogan wore the full Mick Dundee outfit, leather vest, crocodile hat, and a large hunting knife dangling at his hip. The cameras hadn't even rolled, but passers-by stopped. They thought he was a genuine Bushman lost in New York. Some asked for directions, others asked him to hail a taxi, and one tourist even pulled him aside to ask for hunting tips. Hogan didn't correct them, responding in his thick Australian accent. The result? An entire street believed they'd met a real wild man. This misunderstanding didn't stop on the streets. It spread to the very title of the film. 15. The title made American audiences think it was a crocodile hunting documentary. In Australia, the film was released with a simple title, Crocodile Dundee. Everyone understood it was a nickname, but in the US, things took a different turn. Many viewers saw the poster and were convinced it was a documentary about crocodiles or a hunting guide show. Can you believe it? Because of the title, some walked into theatres expecting to see hunters wrestling real crocodiles. The misunderstanding spread so widely that theatres reported it. The studio had to add quotation marks to the title, Crocodile Dundee, to clarify it was a character's nickname not an actual crocodile. But there were even stranger mix-ups when overseas audiences couldn't distinguish Hogan from another Hollywood star. 16. Foreign audiences thought Mick Dundee was Clint Eastwood. When the film reached beyond Australia, many international viewers couldn't believe their eyes. They saw Hogan with his squinting eyes and rugged demeanour and insisted he was Clint Eastwood. Some bootleg posters in Europe even styled Hogan like Eastwood's cowboy persona to draw crowds. In a few shady releases, Paul Hogan's name was replaced with Clint Eastwood's to sell tickets. Hogan heard about it and just laughed. "If Clint wants to take all the credit, that's fine, as long as I keep the hat." A ridiculous mix-up, but it showed the iconic power of the Dundee character. And that power forced Hollywood to edit, trim, and even alter the film's language. 17. Americans didn't see the original because Australian slang was cut clean. Think American audiences saw the exact original film? Wrong. For the US release, over 60 Australian slang phrases were cut or replaced with more understandable lines. Fair dinkum vanished. You've got Buckley's was gone too. The result was a safe international version for American audiences to digest. But in Australia, fans saw the cuts as stripping the film's soul. To them, only the original was the true Dundee, a work dissected to suit the American market, and that language shock was just the beginning. Because at times, even New York police couldn't tell what was film and what was real. 18. Police thought Hogan was a thug because he carried a real knife. One day, off-set, Paul Hogan wandered through New York in his Mick Dundee outfit. The iconic hunting knife still dangled at his hip. Passers-by were curious, but the police weren't amused. A group of officers quickly stopped him, demanding he raise his hands and submit to a search. To them, Hogan was just a strange man carrying a dangerous weapon in a crowded city. It took several minutes of explanation and showing filming permits to defuse the tense situation. Yet, despite all the troubles, the film went from a small gamble to an unbelievable box office phenomenon. 19. From a small gamble to the second highest grossing film in the US. I was truly shocked to learn this film was made on a budget of just about $8.8 million. A tiny figure by Hollywood standards. No A-list stars, no flashy effects, just a story about an Australian bushman lost in New York. It sounded like a project doomed to fail. But something unthinkable happened. Word of mouth spread, and the buzz grew beyond imagination. Within months, the film climbed to the second highest grossing movie in the US in 1986, just behind Top Gun. A project once mocked became a global phenomenon, turning Paul Hogan from a local TV comedian into an international star. And as his fame peaked, how Hogan handled the American media was truly astonishing. 20. Hollywood's top star refused all American TV shows. The unexpected success made Paul Hogan a name Hollywood wanted to exploit fully. Interview requests, talk shows, and game shows poured in. But Hogan did something no one expected. He turned them all down. He called those programs plastic TV, fake, forced, like a staged act. Instead of basking in the spotlight, Hogan chose silence, preserving the raw image of his Dundee character. The strange thing is, this refusal made audiences love him more. To them, Hogan in real life and Dundee on screen were indistinguishable. And that's why the film wasn't just a phenomenon, but an unrepeatable legend. Over 3 decades have passed, but Crocodile Dundee remains one of the most impactful films in cinematic history. Released in 1986, the work seemed like a mere small Australian film, but exploded into a global phenomenon, leaving Hollywood stunned. From a simple story about a bushman lost in New York, the film proved the power of difference, both humorous, relatable, and intense to the point of blurring reality and fiction. Audiences back then laughed at the main character's clumsiness, held their breath during dangerous scenes, and were moved by the sincerity of a wild soul in a bustling city. Crocodile Dundee didn't just bring in massive revenue, it created a cultural icon, a character the world remembers forever. The image of a man with a giant hunting knife, a half-arrogant, half-innocent smile, became a shared memory for generations. It proved that no grandiose effects or million-dollar blockbusters were needed. Just a unique, character-driven story could touch and resonate with audiences anywhere. Even today, mentioning the film still sparks curiosity about the strange journey that took a small Australian production to global phenomenon status. If you find these behind-the-scenes truths fascinating, hit like, share, and subscribe to not miss out on more shocking cinematic secrets. Because sometimes, what happens behind the camera is far more dramatic, surprising, and unbelievable than what you see on screen.